What makes a good genre serial? Every genre has its own tropes and conventions, as we've discussed in previous videos in this module. So, what elements come together to make a good serial for each genre? Before we go into that, we're going to talk a little bit about some things that are universal across all genres. Empathy, for one. Empathy with characters is the most addicting thing that any serial can have. Readers may not have walked in that character's shoes before. They may not have had that character's experiences. They may not have much in common with that character, but they can probably imagine what it's like for that character. Second chance at something. Everyone wants a second chance. Almost no one in life looks back and doesn't wish at one point to get a second chance at something. So maybe they haven't walked that character's exact journey, but a character who's looking for second chances or a character who's looking to prove themselves, those are universal human feelings that readers can empathize with. Having a serial where readers can empathize with what the characters are going through, even when the characters are making terrible choices, is one of the most addicting things to a reader because once they connect with a character, once they empathize with that character, or once they empathize with a situation and what that situation is doing to a character, they will keep coming back week after week to know, does the character beat this? Related to empathy is emotion. Not all empathy is about feeling the exact same emotions that the character has felt. Sometimes it's about the plot or the situation. It's, oh, maybe I haven't felt what you're feeling in this situation, but I've definitely been in this situation before, or I know people have been in this situation, or I can imagine what it's like to be in that situation. Emotion is universal. It is the one universal across all humanity and all human characters. So, anger, sadness, loneliness, these things manifest differently in characters and plots based on backstories and based on cultures and based on how they landed where they are today or other things that have happened to them. But the emotions are still universal. Sadness is still a universal emotion no matter what causes it. So the stronger the emotion is in your story, the easier it is for readers to connect with it and to feel that emotion that they have felt for other reasons. So no matter what genre you're writing in, as long as you are portraying an emotional connection or the ability for readers to emotionally connect with what is happening in the story and what those events are causing your characters to feel, you're golden. If your characters are having something frustrating happen, they may react a multitude of ways. They might react sadly or with anger or with annoyance or with frustration. All of these are emotions. And as long as you are showing the characters feelings about this, that is going to give readers a very good opportunity to connect with the character and to feel with the character. And that's going to keep them coming back week after week. Very closely related to that is the idea of showing, not telling, which is something that writers hear a lot and can be really confusing. What does that mean? I once heard it described as don't tell us what is happening to a character, show us how it is making them feel. So if a character is being oppressed, don't tell us they're being oppressed or here are all of these awful things that are happening. Show us that the character is feeling frustration or anger or sadness because of these things happening, which is a little bit more of an organic way to portray what is happening without it being exposition heavy or description heavy, which can pull readers out of a story. If you are showing how the characters are reacting, not only are you creating that emotional connection and the potential for empathetic connections, but you are also telling the story in a way that grabs readers' attention better than chunks of description or telling us in simple fact what is happening. One thing to be careful of is phrases like, she thought as you are describing what a character is thinking. Or she found that she believed as you are describing what a character is believing. Or he saw this as you are describing what he is seeing. Because that goes into show and tell territory, where you are not only showing the reader that your character is seeing this or thinking this or feeling this, but you are also telling them they are thinking this or seeing this or feeling this. That's unnecessary. It's repetitive. It slows the story down and it jars readers out of the story. Another universal across all genres for a story to be interesting and to grab a reader, it needs conflict of some kind. It doesn't always have to be high stakes. There are a lot of low stakes conflict stories. Cozy stories have low stakes conflict for the most part. It doesn't always have to be external forces. Internal conflict can be just as compelling and setting and frustrating and an even bigger struggle sometimes than external conflict, especially in more character driven genres like romance. You might not have as much external conflict, but you have a lot of internal conflict, which is usually what is keeping your main characters from being happy together. That's the journey that they have to go through, is that they have to overcome their internal conflict, or they have to heal through things, or situations have to change so that the things that are obstacles for them change. So, where romance might have more internal conflict, genres like sci-fi and fantasy and lit RPG might have more external conflict that the character is battling to get to the other side. This is especially frequent in quest-based adventures or journey type stories where they have to go from this point to this point, and maybe it's not exactly a quest, but it is a mission or a journey of some kind. Either way, that conflict is what is going to drive the character dynamic. It is what is going to drive the story forward, and you cannot have an interesting story without it. External conflict for genres like sci-fi, fantasy, horror, mystery, and thriller, those are fairly easy to imagine. And even external conflict in romance, where star-crossed lovers because families won't let them be together, or rivals because they're on opposite sides of something. That's fairly easy to imagine, but also very present in some romance serials is conflict that takes the form of what we tend to call drama. Telenovelas are very good at this. Certain soap operas have a very dramatic style of conflict where it's one thing after another. And those can also make good romance serials as long as you balance the drama with character depth and you're not just throwing events at readers to keep the cliffhangers coming, because readers will get bored of that. They will stop coming back. So, drama in a romance serial or in any serial, soap opera, telenovela kind of drama, can be used very well as long as it is balanced with characters actually growing, actually progressing, and the same issues are not coming back around again and again. They need to level up. And that's not just true for lit RPG serials, but for serials in any genre. There needs to be a sense of the characters leveling up and leveling through conflict so they are not facing the same thing in a different color. A few things that are especially important to remember about writing serials in the romance genre. No matter what subgenre of romance you're writing in, paranormal romance, alien romance is a character driven genre. In some of the other genres of serials, sci-fi serials, fantasy serials, you can have more plot-driven works, but romance is by and large a character-driven genre because it is about people falling in love and making their way to their happily ever after. And that's not a plot as much as it is characters. So by and large, make sure you have strong characters for your romance genre. Romance is a very trope heavy genre. There are a few genres that are especially trope heavy. Romance is one of them. In fact, the majority of marketing of romance serials right now is done using tropes. And people come to romance looking for their favorite type of romance, whether that's enemies to lovers or best friends to lovers, whether that's second chance or single dad or secret baby. They come to romance looking for this specific story that they want that day or as their favorite to read, period. So learn your tropes. There are a lot of, you could just do a Google search and a lot of sites will come up. Learn your romance tropes, but don't just put them in there without really researching. Think about the way that you've seen this trope portrayed in other romance series. Think about how you connect with the trope emotionally. Why do you like this trope or why do you want to write it? And you just want to write it and make money off it is fine, but you still need to understand why someone would feel the way these characters feel in this trope. Why are these characters enemies? Are they truly enemies or are they rivals to lovers, not enemies to lovers? Make sure you do your trope research, but make sure that when you are writing the tropes, you are letting the people be more than just the trope. They should be fully realized, fully 3D characters in the story, not just the trope piece of cardboard. Emotional follow through is extremely important in romance because that is what keeps the tension and the pacing happening. So if someone says something that a character feels, oh no, about, that should come up later. If someone throws out a comment that makes someone feel excited or happy or, oh no, they like me, that should come up later. Make sure that you are emotionally following through on all of the questions that your characters' arcs are raising, and make sure that you are following through on the hints, the smallest hints, even in chemistry. Not to the point that you bore your reader with the tiniest details, but in a cohesive, flowing way that makes a reader feel like they have been present for the romance as much as the character. One thing to remember about the fantasy genre: people go to fantasy for magic. The foundational definition of fantasy is that it portrays a world in which magic has made things different from our world. So, having a strong magic system or an easily understood magic system can be key to a fantasy serial. You can have many layers to your magic system, or you can have a very simple magic system or something in between. But having some rules to the system is crucial to a strong fantasy story. The more escapist your fantasy is, the better. It can be great to put fantasy versions of issues we have on Earth into stories, and that's always fun for readers to experience how this issue that we have on Earth looks different in this fantasy. But if it's not really grounded to anything else in the world, if it's related to the way that fantasy world operates, it can feel very shoved in and out of left. Also, sometimes you just don't want to deal with the things in fantasy that you deal with in real life because people go to fantasy to escape. And it is the classic escapist genre in many ways, but it is also a genre that people take comfort from because they're escaping into a world where things are just different. They have to deal with their reality. The more escapist, the better for fantasy. That doesn't mean divorcing it from characters that feel human and act human if they are human. Which brings us to other species and creatures. Fantasy is well known for having many different kinds of species, some of them drawn from traditional sword and sorcery, and some, many, drawn from mythologies or from around the world. The key to doing that well is remembering that if you are going to use a species from another culture's mythology, then it shouldn't just be shoved in your story with no background or connection to the world that you it should make sense for the world that you built. If you are building a Japanese style world and using Japanese style mythology because it fits in the world, that makes sense. If you are just throwing Japanese mythology into a Hebrew world, makes less sense. Another key thing to remember about species and creatures from other cultures' mythologies is to thoroughly research them and have a respectful attitude about portraying them according to the mythologies. There are many different takes on even a single creature in Greek mythology. There are many different stories, for example. But doing your research and crafting stories that make sense for that creature and that culture is extremely important to avoid cultural appropriation. Alternately, you can mix and match elements from species or creatures across mythologies and then give it your own name. And finally, remember not to overload your fantasy serials with too many hard terms. The names should feel appropriate for the culture that you are building. But if the names have a lot of apostrophes or dashes, as the cliches tend to, they can be difficult for people to really even think of pronouncing when they're reading it. And then that can just get bored. What makes a good sci-fi series? Where no one has gone before is one of the foundational thrills and pulls to the sci-fi serial. It keeps people coming, whether it's science that people haven't really can't have here on Earth. It's implausible or impossible here on Earth for whatever reason in our time period, in a future time period. Whether it's technology that we can't or don't have yet, portraying where no one has gone before, whether it's in location, science, or technology, is one of the things that keeps people looking for new sci fi and coming back to experience sci fi. But also, new life and new civilization. Curiosity and fascination of what other sentient beings are out there in the universe has been a steady constant of the human race for eons. And that's not ever going to go away because humans will always wonder what is beyond this? What is out there? Portraying, especially if you're portraying like a space travel story, that element of here's what's out there, here's what might be out there is going to keep people reading and going to intrigue them more. Futuristic perspectives. Accepting attitudes is a huge piece of what keeps people looking to sci fi and watching and reading sci fi. We know the attitudes of humans around us, we know the limitations. What are people like in the future? Are we going to feel the same way? Are we going to think the same way? And to a certain degree, these things are limited by how we think people in the future would behave. But one reason that sci fi is so popular with a lot of people is because there's a variety of perspectives, especially shown in serial sci fi stories like Star Trek, where a huge variety of perspectives that we don't even agree with today or that are different from what people thought today, 30 years ago, 60 years ago, that keeps people coming back to sci-fi to experience those alternate perspectives, to think about how things can be different or how they're not different right now and why they're not different. The hope that not just the world can be better in the future, but so can people is a big thing of what keeps people coming back to sci-fi. And if you can tell a story that portrays the fascination and the curiosity and the wonder of where science can go, where technology can go, where space travel can go, what kinds of beings are out there, and furthermore, how humans can change and adapt and be better and grow and change, you're going to hook people with your sci fi serial. What makes a good lit RPG serial? Recently, I saw someone say that one of the reasons people are readers are flocking to lit RPG serials in droves is because they are easier to follow without recapping the previous story. Many lit RPG serials release hundreds of episodes. And when you have that many episodes of a story, it can be very difficult to read 3 episodes a week, even 7 episodes a week without remembering where you are in the story. And because of the style of lit RPG storytelling, it's very easy to just jump into the story and have fun in the adventure and where you are in the story without having to remember a lot of details that came before or having to keep all of that in your memory to track. It's a low friction entry into reading for a lot of people, and that's fantastic. And it's one reason lit RPG has become so popular over the last few years. There's almost unlimited potential for adventure in lit RPG, and also almost unlimited potential for the world that you can create. Because think of your favorite video games. Maybe you love video games across a variety of genres, or just think about the variety of video games that exist in general, or tabletop RPGs that exist, from classic fantasy to sci-fi esque to more urban type stories. Lit RPG has so much potential to put any game style world into a story and follow the main character or the main character party through leveling up and progressing from conflict to conflict. It also makes tracking descriptions fairly easy. Clothes, skills, weapons, all of these are tied to stats. That makes it easy for you as the reader, for the reader to follow along in the story with whether a character can feasibly go up against an obstacle and win or not. I saw another post recently on Lit RPG where someone said that it had taken them a long time to get into Lit RPG because they thought there's nothing new under the sun. It's going to be extremely boring. And then they got into Lit RPG and they were surprised at the variety that existed in the genre. And they wished they'd tried it before. And that's another fun thing about Lit RPG is that you can write the same basic fantasy RPG world, but changing the characters, changing the progression of where it goes, changing details and flavor, the horizon is the limit, which means it's limitless. What makes a good mystery or thriller serial? First of all, tone. The tone of a mystery or thriller is everything. Both are rooted in suspense and how you describe the puzzle of a mystery, because all mysteries are based around a puzzle of some kind, whether it's a murder mystery or some other kind of mystery, it has a puzzle at its heart. And thrillers are about something high action and suspenseful, like a chase of some kind, or a conspiracy, or a protagonist versus antagonist clash. And the tone of how you tell that story is a huge part of the pacing of both mysteries and thrillers. Mysteries should keep people thinking about the puzzle. It should describe how the characters are feeling and what they're thinking in a way that contributes to the overall feeling of mystery. And the same thing with thrillers. Whatever it's describing, however you are portraying the story to the reader, it should contribute to the thrill by a little bit of more dramatic storytelling than you would find in some other genres, because that's what keeps the reader on the edge of their seat. Oh no, what's going to happen here? But don't prioritize plot twists in either genre over a good story. I recently saw a post talking about it's okay if readers guess some of the plot twists. If a few readers are guessing, that's good. It means you are telling a good story because they are following the breadcrumbs that you put down. They're following the trail of clues, and some of them are making that leap and they are correctly deducting what is happening in the story, and that's a good thing. And you want your plot twists to make sense. If all of your plot twists come out of nowhere and the readers can't guess them, that can actually make for an extremely disjointed serial or a disjointed story, period. So don't prioritize plot twists and shock value over a story that makes sense and that flows. And don't punish your readers guessing what you're writing. What makes a good horror series? Start small and build to more. It can be very difficult to maintain horrifying tension over a period of time because at some point people's nerves break down or they get bored or they just want to find out what's causing the horrors or why it's there. So if you start small and gradually build up to more, you keep readers coming back and it's more addicting than if you hit them with a great horror all at once and then you just keep trying to match and make even greater and greater horrors. So starting small and building to more like the Magnus Archives, for example, where things seemed really normal except for this tiny aberration here and this slight abnormality over here and this odd little thing right here. Starting small like that and adding on more is what really keeps horror serials entertaining, exciting, and hooky to bring readers back looking for more. Also, almost anything can have a horrifying side to it. You don't always have to come in right out of the gate with something super horrifying. The more normal things are at first, the worse the horror can get. Because when things start out normal and it's just that odd thing right there, and then that odd thing, it gives you room to keep piling things on and keep readers coming back week after week to find out how much stranger can it get? How much more horrifying can it get? As well as seemingly very normal things when viewed through a horror lens really scares people. So if you really want people coming back for an addictive horror serial, try showing them the horrifying in the mundane.